Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hey, you being you specifically, the listener. How are you doing? What's going on with your life?
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah. Speak to your stereo system. Your earphones. Speak it out loud. Excellent. Or that sucks. One of the two. Or meh. All right. Hey, you, and welcome. This is my third time saying it. All right. I'm really bad at this. You think after, I think we're closing in on 2 years.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Still haven't got an intro.
Still haven't got an intro. Still just stealing the ones from my videos, and still doing it poorly.
Yeah, I like it. We're winging it.
Thank you. Well, that's it. That's what we do in the podcast. We wing it. Today we are winging it into Carl Panzram part 2. But before we do, let's just let's gently get into it.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little bit of foreplay. Ease into it. Keith, what's going on with you?
Man, I'm
so much stuff. Wow, he's chomping at the bit, folks, to tell you.
I'm seething.
Seething. How dare you?
So we had to so sort of ghost related.
Oh,
The ghost broke my door.
Are you serious?
I think so. So, do you know me, I had loads of stories of the ghosts always at our front door and messing with the handle and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The handle broke. Yeah, so I had to go up and change the whole handle.
It's in your front door.
This is the front door, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the whole inside the whole front door, it snapped. The inside mechanism is snapped.
Wow.
It's broken. I had to change it. And now I'm like, how do I get reimbursed for that?
Damn, dude. Yeah,
I need to go to the ghost. Do you know what? I can deal with a ghost. Mm-hmm. I can't deal with a negligent ghost. That's not cool.
They better obey house rules, is
right?
What you're saying, or else they're gonna hear about it.
That's it. I need to get on the Ouija board and send an invoice to someone because
I know.
this is not on.
You gotta say, just go home, put your finger down on the table, and say, "Not on my fucking house, pal."
Not here.
Yeah. No messing around. Not on my time.
So
you gotta show them who's boss.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't mind you being here, just don't break me shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents. If you do that again, you're getting a knuckle sandwich. Straight to the face. Your invisible face. All right, man. So that's your latest ghost story. It's now physically affecting things.
Yeah. Annoyingly so. Yeah.
Annoyingly so. But it had already gotten blood in your bathroom.
That's just a bit of a cleanup,
Yeah.
Now I'm out of pocket.
Yeah. Right now things are getting serious. Yeah. All right, it's Malibu Mike is back again, Hollywood O'Hara. You folks are itching to hear about it. Every week I know they're asking me, Mike, what movies have you watched? We need to know what to watch. So today, folks, I've got I was kind of slacking, last week. One of the movies is an old one, which I've seen before, but I recently rewatched it. Mm-hmm. But it's Seven.
Oh, that's a great movie.
What a movie Seven
What's in the box?
What's in the box? Come on. It's so good.
That's a great
Seven
movie.
holds up incredibly well. I think it might be one of the best thrillers ever made.
It is very good.
Hands down.
I love the whole scenery, like the dark and the rain. It's just how it's
so
shot.
moody.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
David Fincher is so good at getting the atmosphere of the movie is just really, really it's stunning. It feels so gritty and sort of weird movie. It's sort of like the whole movie feels like it's in a dream. I think the whole movie is probably supposed to be set kind of in purgatory. Hell. Because it's anachronistic because it's there's computers, but Morgan Freeman's character, Somerset, he uses a typewriter. You know what I mean? There's
I did not
technology is all over the place. They never actually say what city they're in.
Yeah.
So I do think it's supposed to be hell or purgatory or something.
That's good. I never got that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Rewatch it again and you notice a lot of weird things. It's very unspecific and just weird. It has this real I was gonna say dreamlike, but it's more like a nightmare. The movie's like a nightmare.
Okay, that's cool.
But it's so good. It holds extremely well. Even Kevin Spacey, noted pedophile predator. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman are just awesome.
That scene, the guy, Sloth? Do you know when he's in the bed and he's been there for years or something?
Right, yeah.
That's haunts me.
Yeah.
He's
alive.
Yeah. He's alive.
Yeah, it's really good. It's so horrifying as a movie. So folks, you've probably all seen Seven, but you know what? It deserves a rewatch because it really is a brilliant movie. Okay, so the other movie I watched during the week was a sequel to a movie, Keith, you and I watched a couple of years ago. I watched Smile 2.
Oh, yeah. I've heard really good things about
Yeah,
Smile 2.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I really, really liked it. We watched Smile 1, I think, before we even started the podcast.
Yeah, I really liked it as well. I thought it was very
before
good.
I started having you on the podcast, you elbowed your way into co-host duties.
I got in. I'm not leaving.
But I like the first Smile.
Yeah.
I would probably say maybe it was the first one was still a little bit better.
Okay.
But I thought Smile 2 was great. Sequels are always very hard.
Yeah.
Especially for these kind of movies. I thought it was really cool.
Holds up.
It actually has Kyle Gallner in it, who I was praising last week in Strange Darling.
Yeah.
He's in Smile 1, and he's in Smile 2. He's not in it for very much.
Okay.
The opening scene of Smile 2 is extremely good. He's in it, and it's all like one shot.
Yeah.
It's like really long one shot. It's
cool.
very, very cool. So as you guys know, just you get cursed if you see somebody does it kill themselves? I'm not actually quite sure what the curse is. But they start smiling. So this curse slowly drives you insane. But so the person who gets cursed in Smile 2 is this kind of singer pop star. She's very successful, who kind of had like a mental breakdown for a year after being in this horrible car crash. Now she's kind of having this comeback, and she witnesses somebody affected by the curse who kills themselves, and then she's got the curse. And it kind of reminds me of another movie that came out last year with one of the main characters being a famous pop star, which was Trap, M. Night Shyamalan. But the pop star in Smile 2 is actually quite a good actress.
Okay.
Unlike M. Night, that's his daughter in Trap, by the way. I didn't know that was M. Night Shyamalan's daughter.
Okay, yeah.
No,
I looked up after
because she's fucking terrible in that movie.
She wasn't great. Yeah.
She's like the worst part about it by far. The movie wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But she was awful.
That movie was a big letdown. I
like the start of it.
I love the premise. I love the idea. The start was great. The last 20 minutes were a huge letdown.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Could have ended so much better.
Yeah, I agree. But Smile 2, thought it was great, good, very good, spooky movie. It's nothing to write home about, you know.
Would you watch it again?
Yeah, I probably would.
Okay, that's how I judge all my movies. I judge it on either would I watch it again, so the rewatchability, and then also would I recommend it.
I would give a ding to both of them.
Okay.
It's no Strange Darling, or my other favorite movies from last year, Long Legs or Nosferatu. I actually think Strange Darling might be my favorite movie last year. It's so good.
I need to watch it.
Yeah, check it out. It's none of them, but it's just a very well-made, good horror movie. It has some really good jump scares and scary moments in it, and mindfuck moments in it. The main character, thought she was great. I thought her performance is very good. Yeah, just an all-around good horror movie.
Nice, okay.
Yeah, highly recommend it. Well, I wouldn't highly recommend it. I'd say
semi-recommend.
Yeah, I'd semi-recommend. I'd give it probably like a 3.5 out of. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. Solid 3.3, maybe even a 4. You know, maybe a 4. You know, it's actually the best movie we've ever seen, folks. I'd say I'd give it probably like a 3.5 to 4 out of 5.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. Anyways, all right, moving on. Let's get into today's tale, folks. We are picking up with one Carl Panzram.
Angry man.
Angry man. Last week we went through what made him so, and his horrible acts, his predilection for men's butts, frankly. Yeah. Yep. I say this jokingly, but it's quite horrific.
And the art of sodomy, as he calls it.
The art of sodomy. Okie dokie, folks. So in last week's episode, we looked at Carl's upbringing and his transition from beaten down and abused kid to, well, doing literally that to anyone he could find, mainly men. He went on a killing spree that, you would usually say, it would put someone to shame, but no one else in history could he have put to shame. He literally has done like the worst kind of shit imaginable.
Yep.
He has countless victims across the United States and abroad, because he went international, baby. He started off on a farm, then to a reform school, then traveling across the USA via trains, using countless pseudonyms, raping, killing, robbing, in and out of prison and jail dozens of times, robbing a former president's house, having his own rape boat. It's like it's always funny. You can have my own P. Diddy style boat. It's literally that. It turns out, wow, it's called coming full circle into him being in prison now.
The implication.
The implication, the implication was strong.
Yeah.
And then he left the US entirely, set sail for West Africa, where he found work on an oil company in Angola. And from there, we continue. The year being, I think it's about 1921 is when we are now. So while in the town of Luanda on Angola's coast, Carl came across an 11-year-old local boy who he managed to lure back to the Sinclair Run site. Once there, Carl brutally assaulted the young boy before bashing his head in with a rock. Carl later coldly described the killing in detail. I left him there, but first I committed sodomy on him and then I killed him. His brains were coming out of his ears when I left him, and he will never be any deader.
God. You know, it's horrendous. But like, just when you think that he couldn't be a bigger piece of shit, so before he raped and murdered this young boy, he thought he'd give it another shot with the girls. And I mean girls. So he bought an 11-year-old girl and an 8-year-old girl. But believing neither of them to be virgins, he returned them and said he was done looking for girls and returned his attention to young boys. I can't believe that we're talking about like children here. It's sick. Wow. Yeah. But I guess we can just add slave owner to his ever-growing list of scumbagery.
Wow. It's weirdly enough, that's not even top of the list.
No, it's not.
That's the thing. That's how horrible he was.
Yeah.
It was almost an open secret among the local population that Carl was the killer of the young boy, but without direct evidence, nothing could be done. Carl moved up the coast and found digs in a fishing village where he waited a few weeks for the heat to die down. The moment it did, Carl hatched a new plan. He'd heard about Europeans based in the Congo being willing to pay a hefty price tag for crocodile skins. He organized a group of 6 local Angolans to go with him on a hunt for crocodiles to sell, each of whom he had promised a cut of the profits. Little did the men know they weren't the hunters at all. Carl was the hunter. Once the crew had paddled canoes far enough down the river not to be heard, Carl pulled a gun on the men and killed all 6 of them. Something he later said he found surprisingly easy. What's weird about this is, like, you could have gone and killed crocodiles and got money. You just killed it. Like, why?
And you got nothing. In his biography, he was really patting himself on the back here as well. So he said, to some people of average intelligence, killing 6 at once seems an almost impossible feat. It was very much easier for me to kill them. He then went on to say that any of the 6 men he shot, they were capable of killing a 12 to 15 foot long crocodile with nothing more than sticks, but he still managed to get the best of them. But he then went on to say that he shot all 6 of them in the back while he was sitting at the back of the boat. So, like, he's not exactly like a skilled hunter here.
Brave man, killing 6 men, shooting in the back. They have spears, you have a gun.
I know.
Like a real hard man over here. Yeah, that's unimaginable and an amazing feat.
I know. Yeah.
Well done.
Good for you. Well done.
Yeah.
Golf clap.
So, while in any other context, all of that would be the most horrifying thing imaginable, in Carl's case, it's just another drop in the ocean of evil. Getting rid of the 6 bodies was a given. Carl simply fed them to the crocodiles they thought they were there to hunt. Once the deed was done, Carl returned to Libido Bay, where he had earlier hired the canoe and departed with the 6 men. Knowing he'd been seen with the victims by dozens of witnesses, he quickly relocated north of the Congo River, eventually ending up in the Gold Coast. Even with the substantial change in geography, Carl knew he still needed to get further away, so he turned to robbing farms and homes until he had enough money to buy himself passage to the Canary Islands. Almost as soon as he arrived, Carl managed to stow away on a ship bound for Lisbon, Portugal. Unfortunately for him, his one-man spree in Portuguese Angola had made Carl a wanted man even as far away as Portugal itself. Without cash in his pocket, a target on his back and his face plastered on wanted posters, Carl had little choice but to stow away once again. This time, he was US bound. He was coming home. Arriving back on US soil in the summer of 1922, Carl found himself some ambition in life. He realized that the one thing he was good at was killing, so why not make some money out of it? He had designs in mind to become a professional hitman, and even took the gun he had committed the Angola murders with to the Maxim Silent Arms Company in Hartford, Connecticut, to have a suppressor fitted. Unfortunately for Carl, his knowledge of suppressors came from the movies and his imagination, so rather than the little pew sound he expected, the .38 still makes a mighty good crack. Did you ever hear a suppressor on a gun? They're still like...
Yeah, they're loud.
Like, it's loud, it just doesn't echo that
much.
It's
not
pew, pew. Yeah, it's not like James Bond. It's like, you can still hear it fairly loudly.
Still a gun, like.
It's like, instead of hearing it from 5 miles away, you'll hear it from maybe 4 miles away. That's probably about it. So that pretty much kicked his dream of being a super spy assassin in the bollocks before it ever got going.
Yeah, and he basically blamed not becoming the world's best hitman on the silencer not working. So he said, and believe me, if that heavy caliber pistol and silencer had only worked as I thought it would have gone into the murder business on a wholesale scale. Like, honestly, like...
that's what was stopping you.
That was the only thing. Like, only a bad craftsman blames his tools.
Exactly. Carl, come on.
Yeah.
Get your act together. Pull up your boots. After abandoning a vague idea to find and steal a ship, similar to the sunken Akisto, which we talked about in the previous episode, that he could then, rename and use to begin his kidnap and murders of drunken sailors again, Carl ended up in Keith's eyes are widening up. You know where Carl ended up. The land of the witch trials.
Well.
Salem, Massachusetts. Nice. Keith is so happy about this. While out on the afternoon of July 18th, While out on the afternoon of July 18th, 1922, Carl crossed paths with 12-year-old George Henry McMahon. McMahon had been hanging out at a restaurant owned by his neighbour, Margaret Lyons. Around 2:15 in the afternoon, Margaret gave McMahon 15 cents to go to the local A&P store for some milk for her when he came into contact with Carl Panzram. Although Carl wouldn't learn the boy's name for years to come, he did chat with him, and McMahon told him he was running an errand for his aunt. Carl walked with the boy, even following him to the A&P store where he chatted with the clerk too. Carl already knew what he was going to do if he got the chance. He needed to get the boy alone. And he did that by asking McMahon if he wanted to earn 50 cents. Carl managed to persuade the boy to board an abandoned trolley, or tram, and that was it. Carl even told him he was going to kill him. Over 3 hours, Carl assaulted the boy multiple times in the worst possible ways, before he finally beat him to death with a heavy rock. Finally, for no reason other than his own sick pleasure, Carl shoved balled up newspapers down the boy's throat. He hid the boy's body in a nearby wooded area, and though he was spotted acting oddly while fleeing the scene, no one thought to stop him. The boy's remains were only found 3 days later, obscured by brush, and, as with the little boy in Angola, in Carl's own words, his brains were coming out of his ears.
He later went on to describe this murder as the one he enjoyed the most.
Really?
Yeah,
this
horrific.
one has gone in as kind of like his most heinous murder. The murder of George McMahon. Yeah,
it's gruesome.
The murder was heavily investigated and splashed across the headlines for several months. Carl, though, had fled to New York right after the murder, and despite several eyewitnesses having seen Carl with the victim, attention instead was focused on a local man, previously convicted of sex offences against kids. Had Carl stuck around, he certainly would have been identified by the unique blue suit and cap combination he'd been wearing at the time. Once again, Carl's kill and move MO kept him free to keep on killing.
We actually passed the house where the boy lived in Salem.
Really? Where about in Salem was it?
It was around Proctor's Ledge.
Proctor's, which is where the Walgreens or CVS was?
The Walgreens, yeah. It's right across the road from the Walgreens.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was on that little... It's on the corner across from the Walgreens.
Okay.
On the same side as the Proctor's Ledge.
Okay, yes. Wow. Okay, yeah. I know where that street is. Yeah. It's a busy street.
Yeah, it's like right there. Yeah.
It's a bit of a walk for folks who are familiar with Salem, or I'm sure I think a lot of our listeners know, but who anyways been there. It's a bit of a walk from downtown, but yeah, it's a very regular spot in the town. Nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Wow. Okay, the more you know.
There you are now.
So after a brief stint as a watchman with the Abico Mill Company, Carl managed to steal himself a well-equipped 38-foot yawl. With a ship to sail, Carl headed back to his old hunting ground of Long Island Sound. Once there, he docked his stolen boat at a New Haven harbor and regularly ventured to Connecticut to prowl for homes to burgle and vulnerable victims to rape, rob, and if needs be, murder. During one burglary of a large yacht, Carl stole a .38 before finding the boat's papers, which revealed the yacht and the gun belonged to the New Rochelle police commissioner. In fact, that greatly amused Carl. In June of 1923, Carl reconnected with a 15-year-old boy named George Wallowson, with whom he had previously groomed. After he lured the boy to his boat, Carl raped and assaulted him. With the boy on board then, Carl sailed the boat up the Hudson River. He found a mooring in a small bay and used the guise of looking for a buyer for his boat to try and lure a new victim with cash on board. It wasn't long before he got a bite, and a man came aboard looking to buy the boat. Carl was planning to get the man drunk before robbing him, but before he could, he noticed something off about the man's behaviour. His suspicions were confirmed when the man tried to pull a gun on Carl, but Carl got the drop on the would-be robber, shooting him twice in the face. He tied a weight to the man's body and threw him overboard. Later, Carl would claim the man is still likely there at the bottom of the bay.
Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I was going to kill you.
Yeah, oh my God. What are the chances?
God, it's so rare you run into people in this line of work.
I know. It's just great to meet a fellow colleague.
I'm going to kill you now.
The next morning, having witnessed the killing and being assaulted several times already, George Wallison managed to jump overboard and swim to shore while Carl was in the middle of stealing fishing nets to sell. George managed to get away and immediately went to the police in Yonkers and reported the assaults by Carl, who was going by the alias Captain John O'Leary.
Oh, jeez.
Due to the lack of accurate information, Carl almost got away, but for once, the police were on the ball. Gotta praise those, NYPD Blues getting him. And they managed to catch up with him on board his yacht. He was taken into custody on June 29th, 1923. He was soon thrown into solitary after a failed escape attempt a couple of days after being arrested. Finally!
Yeah.
He failed in his escape.
We got him.
Out of options, Carl managed to get a hold of a lawyer who he offered the 38-foot yacht as payment for defending him and for his services. His lawyer, the appropriately named Mr. Cashin, actually successfully argued for Carl to get bail and even posted the bond money for his client personally. As soon as Carl's feet hit the street, Carl immediately, as you can imagine, ran away and said, "See you later, Kittens boy!"
I'll see.
Yeah. That left Cashin to try and register the boat that was his payment, only to discover the boat was stolen, meaning it was confiscated by the police. Cashin was down now about the forfeited bail money and one 38-foot yacht. Well, that's what you get.
That's what you get, man, yeah.
Yeah. All I can say to that is, ha ha ha.
It was really weird reading this part in his autobiography. Like, at this point, he talks about killing so, nonchalantly and just, drops it as if it was just a normal part of the conversation. So, he said, when he went to register the boat, he lost her because the owner from Providence came and got her. A few days later, I went to New Haven, where I killed another boy. I committed a little more sodomy on him and also then tied his belt around his neck, strangled him, picked him up when he was dead and threw his body over in some bushes. Then went to New York and got a job as a bathroom steward. He just kind of goes on. He just drops these little oh, now to kill someone in this horrific way. But then I got a job, so it's cool.
Moving on. Yeah,
it's really weird.
In June, Carl, meanwhile, stole himself a new boat from a marina which he promptly crashed off the coast of New Rochelle. By August, now boatless, oh no, Carl was caught by a cop while in the process of trying to loot a train's luggage carriage. Faced with the prospect of returning to jail, Carl decided to do the sensible thing in his mind and charged the cop while swinging an axe like a madman. After a fierce fight that, no doubt had the cop lost, he would have been brutally murdered, the officer was able to get the better of Carl and finally had him in handcuffs. He then escorted his prisoner to the nearest police station. Carl once again gave the alias John O'Leary and admitted to several more burglaries, hoping the law would go easy on him if he just fessed up. Instead, he was remanded into custody with bail set at $5,000 to await facing a grand jury. For some reason, Carl decided to brag to his fellow inmates at the time, and anyone who got an earshot, that he was actually, get a load of this folks, I'm an escapee from an Oregon jail yonks and yonks ago, where he was serving a 17-year sentence for trying to murder a cop. That's after those shooting in a police car and all this shit that he got up to in, well, we talked about in the last episode, but he kept busy.
Yeah. I reckon that he started admitting to this to kind of gain back some reputation. So he was in his 30s now, so he wouldn't be able to compete with, the young and tough 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
So,
I can't keep up with this anymore.
I can't keep up, man. I'm tired, I'm in my 30s.
I'm a bit burnt out from all the killing,
So, I reckon he was just trying to get back someone's reputation, which is all he really had now. Try and get some respect inside. Instead of competing with these guys, he's like, I killed all these people, so you need to respect me.
That even makes him more pathetic.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, really. Initially, the jailers didn't believe his brags and presumed he was simply trying to get himself moved to another jail. They did, though, do their due diligence and sent an inquiry to Oregon state officials to find out if they were, in fact, missing a prisoner. On August 29th, 1924, Larchmont Police Chief William Hines received a reply from Warden Johnson Smith of the Oregon State Penitentiary, notifying him of Carl's 14 years left to be served, and saying Jefferson Baldwin, one of Panzram's numerous aliases, is wanted very badly in Oregon. His was a noted case that attracted considerable attention all over the Pacific coast, and we are very anxious to send an officer for him at the earliest possible moment. And so, for turning himself in by bragging about these crimes and saying he was a wanted man in Oregon, guess what? Carl was like, holy shit, they're actually, they wanted $500 from me. He tried to collect on his own reward, if you can believe that.
That's amazing.
He was unsuccessful.
Oh.
I don't know. That's probably his reaction too.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
In fact, Carl had little option left at this point. He knew he was in line for a long sentence on top of the 14 years he already had coming. Escape was pretty much the only way forward, but the chances were few and far between. It was at this time, while awaiting for the Oregon business to get all straightened out, that Carl wrote a letter, seemingly to an old accomplice of some kind. The letter was addressed to a John Romero at an address in Beacon, New York, not far from where George Wallison had successfully fled Carl's ship. In his letter, Carl appeared to threaten this Romero into sending him cash in return for his silence in regards to things he had done that Carl would tell the police about. All of which he promised to conveniently forget if Romero sent him $50. The money never arrived. Carl never got no $50 from Romero, and authorities were actually never able to identify John Romero, so whether or not the man even existed is a complete mystery. Carl must have known the cops would read the letter, look for a Romero, who may have not even exist. Maybe Carl was just looking to send the police on a mysterious wild goose chase about some boogeyman out there who was even worse than Carl, or some shit like that.
Yeah.
It may have simply been his way of messing with the law.
I'd say so. Like it was well known that the prison guards were going through all the letters and said probably looking for that sweet money, that birthday money from grandma.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was well known, so like he would have known they were going to read it. So yeah, as I said, I think it was definitely a wild goose chase.
Yeah, and he never revealed the truth behind the letter, so we'll never really know. Ultimately, Carl was indicted by a grand jury on the burglary charges. Headed for trial, Carl knew the writing was on the wall. He instructed his attorney to get him the lightest sentence possible in return for a guilty plea and avoiding an expensive and prolonged trial that was only ever going to go one way. The deal got Carl 5 years in Sing Sing prison. Actually a very good deal for Carl. The Sing Sing part of the deal, though, changed quickly. Carl was judged too unruly and sent upstate to Clinton prison, aka Dannemora, a far harsher environment than Sing Sing, which was in itself no picnic. Dannemora, I talked about that in a video once before, because there was a very famous prison escape from Dannemora. Like, it's up in the Adirondacks or something. It's like surrounded by marshes. It's really, really notorious prison for like the worst of the worst.
Right. So like no escape.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But funnily enough, I was talking about it because two guys escaped from it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They literally did the burying through the walls like Shawshank their way out of it. It's
cool.
a really interesting story, but that's for another day.
Right.
The guards at Clinton, or Dannemora, specialized in the prisoners who were considered uncontrollable at other prisons, doling out beatings and routine torture as casually as giving out Christmas presents. Every day at Clinton, Dannemora, was a non-stop fight for survival. It was a competition between the prisoners who were just trying to desperately cling to the last strands of sanity they had left in them, and guards who were trying to beat it out of them. Just like long back in the correctional school, Carl had devised a plan to burn the entire place down. He even got so far as building an IED, an improvised explosive device. How does he get this shit?
I know, right?
To his immense disappointment, the device was discovered by a guard before he could go through with it. Once again, Carl found himself a nemesis. He always needs a nemesis.
He does, yeah.
A guard who Carl thought had it in for him. One day, the guard fell asleep, allowing Carl to sneak up on him and smash him in the head with a heavy hammer. The guard survived, but was seriously hurt. Of course, Carl was super proud of the guard not bothering him again.
It's like Carl's like, he stopped me from blowing up the place and everyone in it. This fucker's got it out for me.
Oh, I'm gonna get him. Yeah. In a moment of grand karma, Carl attempted to escape by scaling a 30-foot wall, only to lose his footing and fall to the concrete steps below. The impact was disastrous for him. In addition to breaking both his ankles and lower legs, he also severely damaged his back. That would cause Carl pain for the rest of his life. All I have to say to that is, ha ha ha. Rather than being taken to the infirmary, Carl was dragged right back to his cell, where he was left to suffer in constant agony for over a year. Finally, Carl was reluctantly allowed to go to the hospital, where they operated and repaired what they could. The surgery included Carl having one of his testicles removed.
What's wrong with you? Well, I broke both my legs and my back hurts a bit. Right, well, that testicle's going to have to come out.
Exactly. Balls first it is.
We'll start there and work our way in.
Once he had relatively healed up, Carl was shipped back to his cell. Having learned absolutely nothing from the 14-month-long ordeal, Carl was caught raping another inmate and was thrown into solitary for several months.
In his own words, he said, I tried to see if my sexual organs were in still good order. This was only 5 days after his testicle was removed. Also, like, it's not.
They should have taken both. They should just take both. He won't try and fucking rape anybody again.
I know, yeah, and like, it's not as if they were like in good nick beforehand. He was riddled with gonorrhea.
Yeah, man, this is horrifying.
Yeah.
The only thing that got Carl through those long, nearly endless days in a tiny concrete block was fantasizing about all the various plans he had for killing as many people as he could as soon as the chance presented itself. He even came up with a plan to dump poison into the village of Dannemora's drinking water reservoir. He later wrote that he wanted to kill every man, woman, and child in the village, the cats and dogs too. Luckily for the people of the village, Carl wouldn't get the chance. Honestly, if he did, there is every likelihood that Carl would have attempted to carry out the plan.
I really enjoyed reading through his delusional plans for mass murder. So these went way beyond just killing this village. So he'd set his sights much, much higher.
He was going to kill New York.
He was going to kill millions of people.
Oh, wow.
So his plan started simple enough. Commit a few burglaries to scrape together like a few $100s.
Okay.
So far, so good.
Fair
Realistic. Enough. Like it.
Okay.
Now that he was flush with cash, the next step was to plant a bomb in the middle of a railroad tunnel and wait for a large passenger train to pass through. So when the bomb went off, it would trigger another secondary explosion, releasing hundreds of pounds of toxic gas that would kill every living thing trapped inside this enclosed tunnel.
This is like sort of a Wile E. Coyote, though, style plan, isn't it?
Oh, buddy, we're just getting started. So once everyone was dead, Carl, he'd be waiting outside with a gas mask at the ready. So he planned to waltz on into the tunnel and rob all the passengers. He estimated that he could collect between 50,000 to 100,000 in cash and jewellery from the 300 or 400 bodies.
Okay.
Now, as I said, this was just phase one, the amuse-bouche, if you will, of what was next to come.
Okay.
So next, he would take his freshly stolen fortune and head straight to the big leagues. New York City. So Carl planned to steal millions of dollars and kill millions of people here. How, you ask? Well, he was going to start a war between England and the United States.
Okay.
Of course.
You really are the most devious bastard in New York City.
So he was confident that he could achieve this by, being a bit of a finance bro and playing the stock market through numerous brokers on Wall Street.
Okay.
Once he had this money in place, the piece de la resistance would be to, and I kid you not, quietly sneak up and sink some great British battleships while in American waters, using TNT with a 15-minute fuse strapped to the boat. Now, in fairness, he did have experience of sinking a yacht a couple of years ago, but at the same time, he got caught for every robbery he murdered, plus he shattered his body and lost one of his nuts falling off a wall. So I'd give him a 50-50 chance.
Wow. It's literally like Dr. Evil style. That's crazy. That's crazy he thought he could pull this off.
It's so good. And
it would be hilarious if he wasn't so horrifying.
I know. And in his biography, the only reason that this didn't happen was because circumstances and luck were against him.
Ah, damn. Yeah. I almost could have pulled it off. He was that close. A hair away. Carl was finally discharged from Clinton, getting back to reality, in July of 1928. After 5 years of relentless suffering, Carl was released onto the streets, determined to kill and pillage his way to hell. He immediately set about committing dozens of burglaries. In Baltimore, Bodymore, Murderland, baby, during a robbery, Carl added another body to his already bloated beyond belief tally. Carl was then arrested for the final time and sent to jail in Washington, D.C. For the first time in years, when asked for his name, Carl actually said Charles Panzram.
You probably ran out of names.
Yeah, fuck.
He just circles back to his actual name again.
Oh shit, that is my name. After only just arriving at the prison, Carl's latest escape plot was discovered when another inmate grasped him up to the guards. In retaliation, Carl was strapped to a pole by his handcuffs and hoisted into the air so that his feet barely touched the ground. They left him there to hang for nearly 48 hours, all 200 pounds of him, standing 6 feet tall. But even so, he was still a fearsome sight of a man with broken legs and missing a nut, with several large tattoos, including a large anchor on his left forearm, and on the other arm, under another anchor, was a crude eagle holding the severed head of a Chinese man, interestingly enough. On his chest were 2 more eagles, along with the slightly ironic choice of words, liberty and justice. What an interesting man,
Right.
Charles Panzram is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
What an interesting life he led.
He's lived quite a life, yeah.
All the time he was hanging, Carl screamed and shouted threats and taunts at the guards. Once more the guards replied by beating the ever-living shit out of him. As part of his taunting of the guards, Carl would tell them about the children he had murdered and how much he enjoyed it. Those boasts continued long after the guards let him down. Carl just happily told the inmates and the guards about the horrific deeds and details of his life. And it was around this time, late in 1928, that Carl met a 26-year-old prison guard named Henry Lesser, who seems to be like the only decent person he met in his life. And it's surprising that Lesser took pity on him and was actually nice to Carl.
He was, yeah. Like, I think it was his only friend, really. Like, and there was a couple of times when Lesser, he'd be in the prison cell with him and, like, he'd have his back turned to him. And Carl, he would, like, you shouldn't turn your back to me. He'd be like, well, I know you're not going to do anything because you're my friend. He's like, yeah, I guess so.
Oh, shucks. Yeah, wow. At the time, Carl was despised by his fellow inmates and guards alike, all except for Henry Lesser. For some unfathomable reason, Lesser took pity on Chuck, Carl Panzram. In spite of everything he knew Carl was, Lesser showed him kindness, even buying him cigarettes and snacks.
You could say that he was the lesser of two evils.
Ooh, very good, my sir. Rather than immediately taking advantage, Carl actually took these small kindnesses to heart, and the two men became friends. I can just imagine Carl getting like those kawaii eyes. It's like, oh. Maybe the first and only real friend Carl ever had. Soon, Carl agreed to write down his life story for Henry Lesser. The subsequent 20,000-word manuscript, covering from Carl's early life and entry to the Red Wing facility, all the way to his arrival at the Washington jail, has fascinated psychologists and criminologists ever since. Carl goes into detail about many of his crimes, as well as giving a cold, honest, and surprisingly articulate account of the inner workings and thought processes of a sociopath, and a man who seems at peace with his own evil.
Yeah, it's such a rare window into a serial killer's mind. Like, most serial killers, they don't leave such detailed accounts of their thoughts, motives, and, reflections. So Panzram's writings, they were a goldmine. I also think it's fascinating not only because of his, his unflinching honesty about his crimes and his lack of remorse, but also because his self-analysis of why he was the way he was, it was spot on. Like, he hit the nail on the head. So he openly acknowledged the abuse, neglect, and violence he endured as a child, and how that had shaped his worldview. Like, he saw himself as a product of a cruel and unjust society. I guess now we're all like, well, yeah, obviously, duh.
Yeah, back then though, that would have been
this is 1900s.
Amazing. Yeah,
yeah, like psychology, it was still in its infancy, especially when it came to understanding the criminal mind.
Yeah.
So this rare level of self-awareness, it was ahead of its time. Still not an excuse for his actions. Like, the man raped and killed children, but it's hard to argue why he saw the world the way he did.
Yeah, I think that's probably what even makes Carl so much more scary as well, because you see a lot of serial killers and monsters out there who are, they're sort of just like not much more than like wild animals. Like, they don't think about these things. They seem just like really dumb. They have zero self-awareness. They just want to kill people because they enjoy doing it. Whereas Carl, like, he fully knew what he was doing. He fully knew why he did it. He fully knew why he was the way he was. And he still was like, yeah, I want to be the most evil fucker who ever lived.
Yeah, it's like, I blame all yous and you're going to suffer.
I think that's what makes him scarier, because he wasn't just doing it on like instinct like some serial killers do.
He was on a mission.
Yeah. And basically one of his main ideas of it was might makes right. And that's how he lived his life, by being as evil as he possibly could, because that's what he, believed might was, I guess. I don't know. He just wanted to kill people, and if he kills it, he's...
Yeah, whoever's more powerful, they're the winner, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I guess he felt like he was the loser his entire life. To Carl, there wasn't really any moral right or wrong, just the strong. Ultimately, whoever won the fight was right. It's a pretty bleak philosophy at best, and a dangerous excuse for a bully, or worse, at the other end of the scale.
Yeah, so it's not the best outlook on life, but I guess like this ideology, this was like literally hammered into him as a child.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So at this point, Carl was still only 36 years old. Even now, after a life of slaughtering his way across the country and even a few continents, Carl had never actually faced the decades behind bars he was now staring in the face. Finally, his chickens were coming home to roost. The first major indictment came down from Philadelphia on October 29th. It was for one of the last and most recent murders Carl had committed. The one on July 26, 1928, the strangling death of Alexander Uzaki, the man Carl killed in the Baltimore robbery. Word of Carl's capture also reached Salem, Massachusetts, where Carl was wanted for the George McMahon killing. 2 witnesses were brought down to Washington to see if they could identify Carl as the man seen with the 12-year-old that day. And unfortunately for Carl, his distinctive features and his clothing he was wearing that day, combined with the witnesses' good memories, well, he was on the hook for that too. Soon, authorities from around the country were lining up to talk to Carl about various crimes and outstanding warrants. At the front of the queue, though, was the warden from Oregon State Pen, who was very peachy keen to have Carl serve the 14 years he still owed him. Carl knew the score. He was fucked. Royally fucked. Carl wrote a letter to the Salem district attorney in which he openly stated that he had killed more than 20 people, and he even told the DA of his written confession. To top it all, he finished the letter by threatening, "I not only committed that murder, but 21 besides, and I assure you here and now that if I ever get free and have the opportunity, I shall surely knock off another 22.
It's a bold move.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see if it pays off.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you ever let me out, gonna kill a lot more people. So look forward to that, pal.
Balls in your court.
Yeah. With multiple life sentences charging for him, Carl first faced trial for the burglary he was being held in Washington for. A trial for which, certified nutbar, Carl decided to act as his own defense counsel. The highlight of a generally inadequate display of lawyering, to say the least, came to a head when Carl decided to cross-examine a witness who had earlier identified him as the burglar. Carl asked the witness, "Do you know me?" The witness, Joseph Serwinski, was completely bewildered. So to clue him in, Carl decided to run his finger across his throat and tell Joseph, "If you continue to testify me, this is what's gonna happen to you." I love it, just threatening the witness in front of everybody at the trial. Carl was immediately found innocent and let go. In opposite world, I wondered, is that what he thought would happen? Yes, of course.
It's up to date. Damn it, you got us.
He was found guilty, and if the threats in front of a jury weren't bad enough, Carl himself was the next person to testify, and then just openly admitted to being guilty on the stand, rendering the whole thing completely pointless.
The funny thing about that is, like, he said, like, he represented himself.
Yeah.
So he called himself to the stand.
Yeah.
And then admitted everything.
And then, yeah, guess what, I did it.
I want the truth. I can't handle the truth.
On November 12th, 1928, Judge Walter McCoy sentenced Carl to 25 years in total. 15 years for count 1, 10 for count 2. As a little fuck you of a cherry on top of the shit Sunday, Carl was to serve the 25 years at his favorite place in the world, Leavenworth, Kansas. Even Carl had to smile at the irony. His last words to the court as he was led away were, "Visit me!" On the 1st of February, 1929, inmate 31614 arrived at Leavenworth, where he was introduced to Warden T.B. White. The warden went through what he expected of Carl, and in return, Carl told him directly what the warden could expect of him. "I'll kill the first man who bothers me." The thing was, it wasn't a threat. Carl simply meant it, and the warden knew it. As a result, the warden had Carl held in segregation away from the other prisoners and limiting his contact with the prison staff. They did find a job for him, working in the laundry. The tasks he was given all meant that he would, have next to no interaction with others and would be alone most of the time. Something Carl was more than happy with. Still, it didn't take long for Carl to once again find himself a nemesis, which is like, he always needs an enemy. Always needs that motivation, They hate us because they ain't us. He's like one of those kind of guys. This time it was his civilian supervisor, Robert Warnke. Warnke had a reputation for being a bit of a job's worth. He would write prisoners up for the smallest infraction and enjoyed it. Since at Leavenworth, punishments were always severe, being written up and, basically would have dire consequences for you. Carl did stints in solitary after Warnke had written him up, which was dangerous for Warnke to have done so. Carl's hatred for the man finally boiled over into action on June 20th, 1929. The two men were in the laundry. Carl folding clothes, Warnke writing up paperwork. All of a sudden then, Carl, without prompt or warning of any kind, he walked over, picked up a heavy metal pole, about 4 feet long. He then walked over to where Warnke was sitting and mercilessly beat him about the head until he was little more than bone and blood and mush. Killing to Carl was like opening a can of Pringles. Once he pop, ain't no stopping. So, without any reason, then, Carl turned his iron bar to the other prisoners in the laundry and then began swinging for them. Yeah, he's like, well, in for a penny. Yeah. Luckily for them, a prison-wide alarm spurred a lockdown and guards were able to subdue him at gunpoint. After a brief standoff, in which he casually admitted he just killed Warnke, Carl gave up the weapon and was removed back to his cell.
Just a quick side note, Robert Warnke, he was actually active in the Leavenworth Ku Klux Klan.
Oh,
just saying. Just saying.
Let's not cry over spilt milk.
Right.
Like, all I'm saying about that.
Like maybe if Panzram had focused his anger on guys like that, like he could have been like, you know, like the next Punisher or broke-ass Batman.
So during all of this, Carl never failed to keep up with exchanging letters with Lesser, Henry Lesser's good old buddy. The letters acted as an extension of the 20,000-word autobiography, and might even be more insightful than the original document. In one key letter, Carl attempted to understand the new, reformed conditions at Leavenworth. After explaining that he figured that he was going to be tortured and beaten no matter what he did, he might as well try and escape and be as much of an inconvenience as possible, well, when he arrived it wasn't quite that. Guards would simply return him to his cell after he acted out and just leave him alone. He said, quote, "No one lays a hand on me. No one abuses me in any way. I have been trying to figure it out, and I have come to the conclusion that, if in the beginning I had been treated as I am now, then there wouldn't have been quite so many people that have been robbed, raped, and killed." Wow, finally he's like, Now though, beginning on April 14th, 1930, Carl would face one last trial, one last judge for the prison laundry murder charge. The outcome from the very beginning was pretty much nailed on, and Carl knew it. Once again, Carl refused an attorney and entered a not guilty plea. The prosecution called almost a dozen witnesses, including the warden and each of the men who had been in the laundry at the time and had directly witnessed Carl kill Warnke. The judge took less than an hour to reach a verdict. It was only ever going to go one way. Judge Hopkins confirmed the sentence and imposed a sentence of death by hanging to be carried out on the 5th of September. Carl took the opportunity to threaten the judge, may as well,
of course,
saying, "I certainly want to thank you, Judge. Just let me get my fingers around your neck for 60 seconds and you'll never sit on another bench as judge."
Okay, oh, wait a minute.
Almost got me there. Carl then laughed out loud as he was led back to his cell by US Marshals to await his execution. The time finally came when Carl was taken from his cell at 5:55 a.m. on Friday, September 5th, 1930. Around a dozen or so guards and several newspaper reporters were the only witnesses. Carl was escorted to the gallows by 2 US Marshals. The noose placed around his neck, Carl was asked if he had any last words, to which he famously replied, "Yes, hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill a dozen men while you're fooling around."
It's amazing.
He really hated people from Indiana, I guess. With that, the trapdoor was sprung, and at 6:03 a.m., 7 minutes after leaving his cell. Wow, that's so quick, by the way.
Yeah, it is quick.
It's like 7-8 minutes and he's done. Carl Panzram's rampage was finally over. He was pronounced dead 15 minutes later. He was later buried in the prison cemetery, row 6, grave 24. Only a stone bearing his inmate number to mark the grave. And so ends the story of Carl Panzram, a case as interesting as the man himself was terrifying. He was such an interesting figure that even in his own lifetime, which was in the very earliest days of psychology and psychiatry, being anywhere near to recognizable things that we see them as today, several notable intellectuals of the day, including a Dr. Karl Menninger, who's a very famous psychologist, he wanted to study Carl. A lot of people wanted to study him. They all found him fascinating, despite Carl being openly hostile and refusing to play the psychology game. By that point, Carl was just eager to get on with the death sentence, and it's a bit of a shame that we didn't get more out of him from a psychological point of view, because, well, he was a pretty unique case, honestly one of the most horrifying men to have ever lived, and what's worse is he knew it, and he knew why he was the way he was, and he just wanted to keep on going till the whole world burned.
Very, very true. And it's like such an interesting case. And like he definitely had a tough childhood, but I think things really started to go downhill after he was sent to that reform school at age 11. And he definitely wasn't the only one let down by the system. So this is what Carl had to say about the reform schools.
Okay.
What others may have learned by the same treatment in other similar institutions, I don't know. But this I do know, that in later years, I have met thousands of graduates of those kinds of institutions, and they were either going into, or leaving jails, prisons, madhouses, or the rope and electric chair was yawning for them, as for me.
Wow. And there you go. That's the story of Carl Panzram. We shall leave you there for today, folks. Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah. Dark.
Wild one.
Dark as hell.
Really dark, yeah.
It's kind of like, he literally, I think, is the definition of this demonic serial killer. Like, it's hard to top how vile and evil he was, you know?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much for listening to the That Chapter podcast. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the man sitting across from me. I hope you enjoyed this whole episode, and new episodes of the podcast out every single Monday morning, and listener stories up when we get them up, really. And as always, so please give them a go, and all right, until the next one, please take care of each other and yourselves.
And I'll see you.
You will. All right. Thanks, folks. Bye.